Be with you. Looking good, baby. OT.
All right. We're going to have a little bit of fun today. Yeah. It's been interesting. Since a few months back, we had this brief interaction with an individual by the name of Chief X, or who calls himself Chief X, by the way, and claims to be a historian on Egypt, makes a lot of claims about Egypt. And one of the claims that he makes is that Egypt was founded by Caucasians, right? And when I responded to that, tried to ask him a little bit, to find out how he came to that conclusion over Ma'at Forever's panel, he became very angry and very disrespectful. I would say he behaved outside of, what's really necessary to have a intellectual conversation about the matter. And for a person to make such bold claims, you would think he would be a little bit willing to engage his own views, so that didn't go over too well. But nonetheless, I followed up on it and I pointed out some things where he was in extreme error with. And ever since then, this is like 3-4 months ago, haven't heard back from Chief X at all. Zero. He had no retort. Zero retort. Didn't address the information presented to him. Nothing. It was just like flat out zero. Like, run, hide. Hey, Andrea. He ran. It's like you run, hide, and put your tail between your butt and just roll over or stick your head. Do what an ostrich does. Just stick your head in the hole and pretend like nothing happened. Well, that's all I really heard from Chief X was in response was nothing, was zero, right? And until today. And that's where we're at now. So give me 2 seconds and I'm going to set something up here on the screen and we're going to go through it. 2 seconds, y'all. Yes. So yeah, and so that's what happened, y'all. And oh, by the way, click the like button, share, yeah. And so I never got any response to Chief X. It's almost like he take the route a lot of people take, and that is like, why speak on something when it's going to come back to you in a bad way, right? So just pretend it didn't happen. Pretend it doesn't exist, and that way you never have to address the information. But in any case, this lunacy, let's get to the bottom of it. There's been claims by persons like Chief X and others, Garfield Reed, which is, I don't know what to call that, but in any case, these two seem to have a fascination with each other, but by the way, but there's been claims that, they're saying Chief X had said sub-Saharan Africa, which is a really gross term, by the way. It's unscientific on to today's standards. He said sub-Saharan Africans have nothing to do with North Africa, nothing to do with Egypt, and that's a flat out lie. Science has not come to any conclusion like that. People have debated it, right? But piece by piece, the argumentations have fallen to the side, you know, and they've lost that debate. One of the reasons why they lost it is one claim that we're making has been debunked by DNA. Yes, DNA. If there's no connection, you won't see a connection in DNA in people. You see what I'm saying? If there's no connection, it won't be there. Especially with today's DNA standards, you know, they can find out a lot of things about your ancestry through DNA. I mean, not just like what tribe you came from, maybe, or what region of Africa. No, much deeper. Like which time period certain events happened in your DNA. You see what I mean? I mean, they can really go back. And I suspect this is why you don't hear much from Chief X anymore. But the claim about sub-Saharan Africans not having anything to do with North Africa, that is completely false. DNA has debunked it. Yes, that's true. That means for people like African Americans also, not just people that are called sub-Saharan Africans, you know, we have to understand that's an erroneous term. It really doesn't exist. But it's been debunked. And the theory is that, you know, there was a theory that the reason why some sub-Saharan African DNA has gotten into North Africa is because of the slave trade. Well, it has been debunked. Debunked. It is no longer science to repeat that. You see, you have to come back and prove the science that proved them wrong. You have to come back and engage that science to prove yourself correct again. And they have not done that yet. There hasn't been any retort regarding sub-Saharan, regarding this thing about the Sahara slave trade, right? And we went over this information a few weeks back. We went over this information a couple months back, but then we went over it just a few days ago again. You see what I mean? And there's loads of it. It's an erroneous claim. But I want to skip back past that part and get to something more exciting. And that is the original claim, where people like Chief X, who probably have never read this stuff, claim they're getting their facts from. I don't even think he knows where he got that argument from. He mentions Hawass a lot. I think he got it from Wikipedia. But what you got to understand about reports is that, you know, Wikipedia is just people that write shit in. They're not always up to date with everything. You see what I mean? And although Wikipedia can be helpful, it's not necessarily everything, you know? And I'm going to give you an example right here. I'm going to, and I hope people copy this and check it out, you know, let me know what you think of it. The original claim has something to do with this report right here. Or let me blow that up for y'all real quick. So everybody can read it. Now, okay, that's set up. But one other second, I forgot. I need to show you all the comment that I'm referring to, the reason why I decided to do this today, so y'all can see for yourselves. Let me see here. Where is it at here? Right, here we go. Now, I like people that engage, and that's great, you know. And it says I haven't read it, but you can drop the link here. But let's see here. This is the comment. And since I've really looked at this before I even bothered to respond to Chief X or ask him any questions about where he gets his findings from. I mean, he got angry. He lost his mind when I just asked him, when's the last DNA report you read about North Africa and DNA? Or when's the last report you read about Egypt and DNA? And he lost his mind. I mean, trust me. If you don't trust me, just go to the search bar on my page and type Chief X. You will see it lose his mind in real time. But this comment is not from Chief X, but it's obviously from someone that seems to hold him in some kind of regard, you know, enough to mention him. But it says, he writes this: Keita added the different data algorithms might give different results, which reflect the complexity of biological heritage and associated interpretation. And then he writes, I wonder if they added North African DNA, which is predominantly mixed with Asiatic ancestry, then I'm pretty sure the results would have been very much different. So Chief X is not actually wrong in what he believes. Further to this finding, I believe this is Afrocentric bias study, as from the 3 samples, it is obvious that sub-Saharan DNA will probably be more dominant, considering Eurasian and East Asian originate outside of Africa. Therefore, it would have made sense to include North African specific DNA samples, more accurate results. Okay, everybody see that? Now we're going to read, just so we can understand that this person, although they might have good intentions, obviously has not been reading any reports. And I want to note one other thing. Keita did write this. Where he writes this, Keita always writes this. He always writes this comment. Keita added that the different DNA algorithms might give different results, right? Which reflects the complexity of biological heritage. Keita, being a actual PhD, always stresses conservative results, caution in assuming, which is something Hawass did not do. And it's something Keita criticizes Hawass, but not just Hawass, because Hawass he doesn't have shit to do with DNA at all. You see what I mean? Now let's read Hawass's criticism. Now, where Hawass gets his information from, right, is from a PhD by the name of Schuenemann, right? That's right here. And a lot of people don't know this. Some people know it, but just for your own reference. And this report by Schuenemann, because of its quote unquote findings, it got international acclaim overnight. Like, it was like, hey, y'all, the Egyptians ain't niggas. Let's celebrate. That's how much fame this report got. It was like the whole world was waiting to disprove this. I mean, you know, it's bad enough they look black, many of them. You know, that's hard enough to have to accept. But the world was happy. The Asiatic world, some of the European world not so happy, because guess what? Many of the Europeans do not agree at all. And in this report, as you can see, not only is S.O.Y Keita here, but it's also Jean-Luc Gourdine and Alain Anselin, right? Now, they're going to criticize the report. And what I'm going to do is let it play from here so you can hear it. All right, let's go.
Guadeloupe for Ankhou / Cahiers Caribéens de Egyptologie, Guadeloupe, Martinique, * corresponding author, godiniosu@gmail.com, godiniosu@gmail.com. Schuenemann et al. One seemingly suggests, based largely on the results of an ancient DNA study of later period remains from northern Egypt, that the ancient Egyptians, as an entity, came from Asia, the Near East, and that modern Egyptians received additional sub-Saharan African SSA admixtures in recent times after the latest period of the Pharaonic era due to the trans-Saharan slave trade and Islamic expansion. In spite of the implied generalization about origins, the authors do offer the caveat that their findings may have been different if samples had been used from southern Egypt, and this is a significant admission.
So you hear this. First, right, they're telling you what Schuenemann's findings are, right? They're going to start there, what his findings were from the report, right? And which a lot of people have leaned on a similar concept, and that is that the Sahara Desert has been an extreme barrier that stopped only human beings from crossing, not dogs and cats and rats, right? Not that. No. All the animals get back and forth, but only the human beings, and particularly only the black ones, because by the way, the Asiatics could come into sub-Saharan. They could cross the Sahara. They had no problem. It's only the Negroid types that seem to have a problem with the Sahara. And now you can see how erroneous that is. But here, they're already beginning to say that, Schuenemann's report, it lacks participants. It lacks, what do they call it? Respondents. It lacks enough DNA to come to the conclusion in the first place. But let's continue.
Oregon Health and Science University, 2 Smithsonian Institution, 3 National...
Hold on, let me start here.
Oregon Health and Science University, 2 Smithsonian Institution, Institution, 3 National Institute of Agricultural Research, France, Guadeloupe, for Ankhou / Cahiers Caribéens d'Egyptologie, Guadeloupe, Martinique, * corresponding author, godiniosu@gmail.com, godiniosu@gmail.com. Schuenemann et al. One seemingly suggests, based largely on the results of an ancient DNA study of later period remains from northern Egypt, that the ancient Egyptians, as an entity, came from Asia, the Near East, and that modern Egyptians received additional sub-Saharan African SSA admixtures in recent times. After the latest period of the Pharaonic era due to the trans-Saharan slave trade and Islamic expansion. In spite of the implied generalization about origins, the authors do offer the caveat that their findings may have been different if samples had been used from southern Egypt, and this is a significant admission. Their conclusions deserve further discussion from multiple perspectives which cannot be fully developed due to space limitations. There are alternative interpretations of the results, but which were not presented as is traditionally done, with the exception of the admission that results from southern Egyptians may have been different.
So right there, they're already telling you that they didn't use any samples from southern Egypt. And they're not talking about Nubia. They're talking about southern Egypt. Yes, Egypt. Part of Egypt and part of ancient Egypt. That part of Egypt. But it goes on. It's not just that. It's not just that. Check it out. I mean, essentially what they're saying is that they're breaking down how erroneous the claims, the conclusions that Schuenemann's report claimed to come to, right? And they're going to break it down academically right here. Sorry to keep stopping it, but let's see.
Ancient Egyptian genomes from northern Egypt, a further discussion.
Hold on. How come I don't just start down here, man? Let me see. Can I get down to here? Maybe I can just...
Ancient Egyptian genomes from northern Egypt, a further discussion. Schuenemann et al. One seemingly suggests, based largely on the results of an ancient DNA study of later period remains from northern Egypt, that the ancient Egyptians, as an entity, came from Asia, the Near East, and that modern Egyptians received additional sub-Saharan African SS, the caveat that their findings may have been different if samples had been used from southern Egypt, and this is a significant admission. Their conclusions deserve further discussion from multiple perspectives which cannot be fully developed due to space limitations. There are alternative interpretations of the results but which were not presented as is traditionally done, with the exception of the admission that results from southern Egyptians may have been different. The alternative interpretations involve three major considerations: 1. Sampling and methodology, 2. Historiography, and 3. Definitions as they relate to populations, origins, and evolution. Evolution. 1. Sampling and methodological strategy. The samples can be questioned as to their representativeness of Egypt in terms of size, spatiotemporal and sociocultural aspects. All of the samples are from the northern half of Egypt, from one nome which is 2.4%. 1/42 of A nomes. Ancient Egyptian culture originated southern Upper Egypt too. The sociocultural dynamics are not fully considered, the information on the origin and social status is incomplete or unknowable in fact. The mummies are clearly assumed to be representative of the local population based on an incomplete archaeological report in spite of the historical information provided about northern Egypt's interaction with the Near East since the pre-dynastic and the known settlement of Greeks and others in northern Egypt in later periods. The timeline is not representative of a history. 3,000 years is missing, e.g. pre-dynastic, early dynastic, Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom too. The samples cannot be convincingly said to represent true breeding populations or those that truly integrate historical information. The authors use Bayesian reconstruction of population size changes through time with beasts, for which there is generally a discrepancy between the marginal prior and the original prior distribution. The available information on the comparison between original and marginal priors, and on prior and posterior distributions, does not consider possible population substructure. Sex-biased sampling, mtDNA, cannot recover population demography of the whole country unless the sample size is large enough and representative in terms of chronology.
Sex-biased sampling.
Regional variation.
I just want to make sure people understand what that is. Sex-biased sampling. Now, if you want to examine DNA, you have the patrial lineage and matriarchal lineage, right? So, as we've been discussing before, these are key elements in kind of in DNA analysis when you're looking at what events might have taken place. So when you're talking about patriarchy, if the DNA findings from the father's side show him to be a certain ethnicity, right, in a region, that says something about the events. If it's mothers, it says something actually different. Now, how many of you all are clear on that? If you're clear on that, press 1. We're talking about the events that led to the outcome. So I'll give you an example. A lot of men go to war. Usually in war, men are out there first on the line. If there's a drought, if there's food, who are you going to send out there to go find some new stuff, right? You're going to send the ladies, the mamas out there, or are you going to send the men? Well, in a lot of societies, depending on what society it is, some of it's men, some of it's women. But see, now this is one important element in history when you're looking at DNA. Okay, so when you hear somebody quoting the mama, you got to ask yourself, the mama was Asiatic. Okay, fair enough. Ask yourself, so who was the daddy? How come they don't have none of the daddy's DNA? You see what I'm saying? Right? That is very important. That's very important. That's just an important. I'm just going to take a note on that. You can Google that yourself. Why is it so important to have matriarchal and patriarchal DNA? Just Google it and find out. I mean, let me go back to playing this now.
Ethnicities, including the foreign presence, class, and geography. It suffers from many biases that can affect the assessment of the effective population size changes, mutation bias, and natural selection. The whole genome sample size is too small, n equals 3, to accurately permit a discussion of all Egyptian population history from north to south.
We're talking about Chief X's claims about Egypt being Caucasian, founded by Caucasians, which, he never really stated where he get it from. But for everyone that doesn't know, it's from a report written by Schuenemann, right? Schuenemann is, a part of the group that Hawass, the Egyptologist, hangs tight to his findings, right? Which S.O.Y Keita, Jean-Luc Gourdine, and Alain find erroneous. And they're breaking it down why they find it erroneous right here. They're breaking it down. Yeah. The timeline is not representative of ancient Egypt history. 3,000 years is missing. Yes. Pre-dynastic, early dynastic, old kingdom, middle kingdom is missing in the DNA, in the DNA that they're using, to make their claims that it's Caucasian or Asian. The samples cannot be convincingly said to represent true breeding populations or those that truly integrate historical information. You hearing that, Chief X? You're claiming to make historical claims, and S.O.Y Keita is saying, yo, dude, you can't make no historical claims based on this report by Schuenemann. That's what they're saying. It's not possible. That's what they're actually saying. Just look it up. It's right here for you. Okay. The authors use Bayesian reconstruction of population size changes through time with Beast. Well, that's a DNA machine, right? Beast, for which there is, for splicing it up, breaking down the DNA, for which there is generally a discrepancy between the marginal prior and the original prior distribution. The available information on the comparison between original and marginal priors and on prior and posterior distributions does not consider possible population structure. Sex bias sampling, mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, cannot recover population demography of the whole country unless the sample size is large enough and representative in terms of chronology, regional variation, ethnicities, including the foreign presence, class, and geography. It suffers from many biases that can affect the assessment of the effective population size changes, mutation bias, and natural selection. Yes, the whole genome sample, they're criticizing Hawass's claims and criticizing Schuenemann's claims, the PhD. The whole genome sample size is too small to accurately permit a discussion of all Egyptian population history from north to south. They're saying it just don't do. They're saying it's just way too small to even have the discussion they're trying to have. Right? Historiography and misinterpretation. Oh, here we go. The authors do not consider, he's talking about Schuenemann, Hawass, their team. Authors do not consider explanations based on historical narrative. Damn, they didn't do that? Although they present historical information. Well, isn't that quite a discrepancy there? I mean, it that would be called hypocritical. That's hypocritical. Oops, let me go up. Let me go back up. I mean, this is S.O.Y Keita, his rebuke of Schuenemann's erroneous findings, right? Which, by the way, there's been no response to it. Okay, let me see here. Okay, 4000 BC, Egyptianized Asiatic rulers and migrants, e.g., for example, the Hyksos, 1650 BC, Northeast prisoners of war from Tutmosis III military campaign in northern Egypt, 1490 BC from diplomatic marriages. Did they have, you know what diplomatic marriages are? That's when you marry somebody from another ethnicity to maintain the peace between two different groups of people. Okay, just to break that down for you, or for some other similar reason like that, right? Yes, that's right. The authors completely dismiss results of PCR methods used on ancient Egyptian remains. So there were other methods used that they neglected to mention in their report that went global, claiming that, hey, Asiatics founded Kemet, you know, Caucasians founded Kemet. Yes, the report that people are using to cite that erroneous claim, they in fact themselves left out findings, right? They just did. The authors completely dismissed the results of the PCR methods used on ancient Egyptian remains. As a Habik et al. States, is this Habik? Habik? Yeah. States PCR-based methods were used successfully on mummified Egyptian cats and crocodiles without creating extensive debate. Results that are likely reliable are from studies that analyze short tandem repeats (STR) strands from Amarna royal mummies, 1300 BC, and of Ramesses III, 1200 BC. Ramesses III had a Y chromosome haplogroup, E1BL. In case you don't know this, that's African, an old African lineage. That's an old African lineage. We've been over this before. We pointed that out when we were talking about the Green Sahara, right? How a lot of those people that live in sub-Saharan Africa today, many of those tribes migrated from the north. Yes, many of them are related to people who used to live in the north that today you would just say, hey, these are Negroes. These are sub-Saharan Africans. They look just like the rest of them. They've been living there. They speak these languages sub-Saharan Africans speak, i.e. they must be, right? Well, guess what? They're connected to North Africa also. Our analysis of strands from STRs from Amarna and Ramesses royal mummies with the POP affiliator based on the same published data indicates that 41.7% to 93.9% probability of SSA affinities. Sub-Saharan African. Boom. That's what that means. Affinities. Most of the individuals had greater probability of affiliation with SSA, which is not the only way to be African. A point worth repeating. Yes, but guess what the other team does? The other team tries to exclude 100% SSA DNA findings, which are the most. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. What you're looking at is pure wishership, is what I call it. They wish that they were Asiatics, that Egypt was found by Asiatics. They're wishing that it was founded by Europeans, and they're basically hoping that nobody reads. That's all it is. That's all it really is. Because if you read, you will find how outrageous some of these claims are. There are some philosophical issues as well, for which space does not permit a full discussion. Conceptually, what genetic markers are considered to be African or Asian needs discussion, and of what defines Africa as well. Yes, indeed, I agree with that 100%. We state that every day. For example, and I'm not even a PhD, but I guess, from reading their work, it's rubbed off on me. This is how you go about it. The E1B1B1 M3578. Do y'all remember this? We showed the map from the Green Sahara. Lineage found in one Abusir El Melek sample is found not only in northern Africa, but is also well represented in Eastern Africa, and perhaps was taken to Europe across the Mediterranean before the Holocene Trombeta personal communication. E-lineages are found in high frequency, 70% among living Egyptians in Adama, right? The authors, define all mitochondrial DNA M1 haplogroups as Asian, which is problematic. You see? You see? Gene history is not population history. Ultimate origins and later sources to a specific region population are conceptually different. Gene history is not also ethnic or linguistic history. M1 has been postulated to have emerged in Africa, and there is no convincing evidence supporting an M1 ancestor in Asia. Many M1 daughter haplogroups, M1A, are clearly African in origin and history. The M1A1, M1A2A, M1A1I, M1ALI, M1E, variants found in the Abusir el Malik samples predate Islam. What? See, again, going back to the Sahara, they have tried to attribute sub-Saharan African DNA being in North Africa. They've tried to attribute all of that to the Islamic slave trade, and that has been completely debunked. It is a fallacy today. Please do not recite that lie. In fact, it's also completely idiotic and irrational. Yes, people been crossing that Sahara as long as it's existed. And on top of that, at one point, there was no Sahara at all. It was all fucking green for tens of thousands of years in the first place. And we're not talking about ancient history. We're talking about leading up to the beginning of Egypt. The shit was green. You see what I'm saying? So what about that? You know? Now, let's go further, okay? Predate Islam and are abundant in SSA groups, particularly in East Africa. Furthermore, SSA groups indicate to have contributed to modern Egypt do not match the Muslim trade routes that have been well documented. You see, the people making these claims, they're just throwing shit out there. They're just throwing lies out there. For the claims to make sense that a lot of those folks make, that are trying to say Asiatics founded Egypt, Europeans founded Egypt, the claims that they're making, if you're really reading the research, you will know they make zero sense. It's almost like the people making the claims don't read the research. You see, it's just like, it's no better than making a wild assertion, just grossly guessing. Now, indicated contribute, right. As SSA groups from the Great Lakes and Southern African regions were largely absent in the internal trading routes that went north to Egypt. So they already just counted that out. That's not how the slave trade had nothing to do with how sub-Saharan African DNA, which is an erroneous term, found its way in North Africa. It's not. It was there long before that, long before the slave trade. It is important, or the Islamic slave trade. It is important to note that sub-Saharan African influence may not be due to the slave trade and overdone explanation. The Green Sahara is to be considered as Egypt is actually in the Eastern Sahara. Yo, y'all got to give your brother here a big clap, because you haven't heard these other platforms really breaking that DNA down, talking about the Green Sahara, talking about how the findings say that not only do sub-Saharan Africans, many of them originate from North Africa, right? But even some of them are related to African Americans. Yes, that means it can be found in your DNA also, North African presence. Yes, you, who I'm talking to, you. Don't let people fucking fool you. In fact, you should be ready to slap the shit out of somebody that's lying about your fucking ancestry. Yes. You're reading Keita's rebuke of Schuemann's report, which people just grabbed on like Chief X and ran like the wind. Like, yeah, I told you white people discovered Egypt. No, they didn't. And no Asiatics didn't either, okay? In fact, you would have to be dumb to think so. But I'm sorry if I sound a little upset. I'm just like, y'all got to get to reading, y'all. They're writing about y'all's. Read about what they saying about y'all. Take interest in what they're saying about your own people, yo. Yeah. Anyway, where was I? Okay. It is important to note that the influence may not be due to the slave trade. An overdone explanation. The Green Sahara is to be considered as Egypt is actually in Eastern Sahara. Sub-Saharan African affinities of modern Egyptians from Abu Sir el-Malik might be attributed to ancient earlier settlers, as there is a notable frequency of Bushmen Canaan deemed sub-Saharan African trait in pre-dynastic samples dating to 4000 BC. And by the way, beyond too, even earlier than that, from Idima, from Idima, Upper Egypt, haplogroup LOF, usually associated with Southern Africans, is presented in living Egyptians in Idima, and could represent the product of an ancient ghost population from the Green Sahara that contributed widely. Distributions and admixture in the African past may not match current SSA groups. For those of you that have not read about the Green Sahara findings on DNA, I will have you know that that these findings date populations that exist in sub-Saharan Africa today, which would be called Negro by Chief X, and everybody else on Earth has been calling them that. Many of them actually migrated from North Africa tens of thousands of years ago, 11,000 years ago, to up to that, maybe even 12,000. But between 4,000 years ago, or 4,000 BC and 11,000 BC, I can bring up the chart again and show folks. I mean, it just is what it is, right? It's not personal, it's science. On the definition of African, Schuenemann, who S.O.Y Keita here is rebuking, who Hawass, the Egyptologist, is quoting. He's quoting Schuenemann's work, which is flawed here, says Keita. Schuenemann seems to implicitly suggest that only sub-Saharan African equals Africa, and that there are no interconnections between the various regions of Africa. Note, rooted in the slave trade, a favorite trope. It has to be noted too that in the Islamic armies that entered Egypt, that there were a notable number of Eastern Africans. It is not clear why there is an emphasis on sub-Saharan when no Saharan or supra-Saharan population samples, empirical or modeled, are considered. Furthermore, there is no one way to be a sub-Saharan African. Now, see, this is where y'all got to read. Y'all have to pay attention, because these people are actually they're basically making large, gross assumptions, which are racist. They're not even based in science. So a lot of that shit that Chief X has been repeating, even from DNAs, you can see in reports, yo, you got to read it. You have to read it yourself and say, yo, does this match up? Is this what science is saying? You know, you really got to be on guard with this stuff. At least to the point where you're willing to read it yourself and be engaged yourself. Don't just trust because you heard something. You know, S.O.Y Keita is one of the leading scholars on this matter. You see what I'm saying? He's not the only one, but he's one of the leading ones. And he is rebuking Schuenemann's report, which is trying to insist or imply that Asiatics founded Egypt and Caucasians, you know. So this is the rebuke here. In the study, northern tropical Africans such as Lower and Upper Nubians and adjacent southern Egyptians and Saharans were not included as comparison groups. You know, isn't this ridiculous? As noted by the authors themselves. So not even their neighbors. Not only did they not include samples from southern Egypt, they didn't include samples from no place else. No, only northern Egypt. And even you're about to find out how limited that was, even because that's even more limited. If you think it can't be even more limited than just northern Egypt, it actually is. It's sex biased, meaning they're not even talking about any male DNA. Conclusion: the Paleolithic past has to be distinguished from the bioculture emergence in the Holocene of any society, including Europe. Egypt, long before the pyramids, was culturally and linguistically African, as evident by numerous studies. Did you hear that, Chief X? Egypt, long before the pyramids, was culturally and linguistically African, as evident by numerous studies, based on standard research which accept Egypt's place in the Nile corridor as having local origins. The symbolism found in the Badarian or Nakadan graves, etc., nor the pyramids were brought from Asia, near East. The Egyptian Neolithic cannot be shown as an entity to have come from Asia. The Egyptian Neolithic cannot be shown as an entity to have come from Asia, although some domesticates were borrowed on local terms into a system of indigenous foraging in the Fayum. Historical linguistics shows ancient Egyptians to be Afro-Asiatic with borrowings from other African language phyla. Archaeological data would seem to indicate an early integration of the Eastern Delta in northern Egypt by early Upper Egyptian rulers since Arihor from Abydos, 3250 BC, who already wrote royal inscriptions in Egyptian in a script and symbolic system that used African flora and fauna. The region of Egypt in northern Egypt had long had social intercourse with the Near East. The ancient Egyptians in origin were not settler colonists akin to European colonists in Africa. Schuenemann study is best seen as a contribution to understanding a local population history in northern Egypt as opposed to a population history of all Egypt from its inception. Do you hear that? Do y'all hear that, Chief X? Do y'all hear that? So where's Chief X getting his notes from? I mean, can he show them? I'm showing you here S.O.Y Keita's rebuke of Schuenemann's work, which is a rebuke of Hawass's claims. Yes, and Hawass is even mentioned in this rebuke. So let's continue. I mean, yes, it does come with the actual findings. Yeah. This is where they mention Hawass, Geographical region affinities of Amarna and Ramesses mummies based on Pop Affiliator 1-8 analysis of 8 pairs of strands. Right. SSA Sub-Saharan Africa, EA Eurasian, A Asian. Y'all got that? I mean, goddamn. All right, so let's see here. Right, and these are the different graves, right? Okay. 8 and 13 pairs of strands from combined DNA index system were used by Hawass, right? Nevertheless, data suggests main sub-Saharan African affinities of pharaonic mummies from the 18th and 20th dynasty, circa 1300 BC, far in the past before Islamic slave trade. You see? Disclaimer. The geographical regions affinities were defined according to the pop affiliated. We acknowledge there might be problems with any type of classification. They're just saying that to be fair. But this is S.O.Y Keita's work here. So he's very conservative. He doesn't make the assumptions that Hawass makes. He doesn't make the assumptions that Chief X makes. In fact, he mentions a disclaimer and he says, be cautious in making assumptions, and affinities, he's saying that. Now let's see here. Okay. And they even tell you what they're picking out of their report, where it's found, blah, 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 their resources, everything to back up their claims and the strands that they're using, right? So there you have it, folks. This is the rebuke of the and this is the center rebuke. This Schuenemann report here is where the claims come from. The erroneous claims about or where Chief X really gets his erroneous claims from, and Hawass gets the erroneous claims from. It's a report that it was like saying to a guy from DC, the best music on earth is go-go music because it comes from my town. That's what I'm wishing for. I want the Grammys to say that, and that's what I'm going to say science says because, hey, I'm from DC. I love go-go. But in science, that doesn't work. That's not fair. That's not real scientific work. You know what I'm saying? But this is what they're basically saying Schuenemann's report was. It's just wishership. It has some serious problems. If you really look into the DNA in Africa, it is highly important to have both matriarchal and patriarchal DNA from both sides of the family. Number one, in this report, they are saying there was gender bias. That's one of the things they claim, gender bias. So let me go to Control F, gender. See if that pops up. Oh, no, I can't pop up. Hold on, let me see. Sex. They say sex bias. That's what it is. See, sex bias sampling. Mitochondrial DNA cannot recover population demography of a whole country unless the sample size is large enough and representative in terms of chronology, regional variation, ethnicities, including the foreign presence, class, and geography. It suffers from many biases that can affect the assessment of the effective population size. Population size changes, mutation bias, and natural selection. Now, to a lot of people, they may not care which side it comes on, but as they say, it does tell you things, but it's not the only thing that's important, which is not being mentioned, which is not in their report. So many of these things are, but let me read this again. Sex bias sampling. Mitochondrial DNA cannot recover population demography of the whole country unless the sample size is large enough. And the reason why they say this is because of how people migrate. Men are migrating in a different way that women are migrating at this time. Often men are migrating because of war and conquering. This must be understood. And often women are the receivers of those conquering men. You understand that? Because these conquering men have babies. You see? So it's important to note this, feature. And that's something that's commonly done in DNA when they're trying to understand what happened, So in other words, it works both ways for everybody, you see? So, but one side of the DNA of any group is not enough. You need both sides unless the sample size is large enough, meaning the respondents, how many different samples from different people you get. That's what they mean, right? By sample size here. So, they just rush to reach a claim that defies all other science being done, sadly enough. And This is where this idea comes from, and this is S.O.Y Keita rebuking it. Now let's see here. And in general, they said the whole genome sample size is too small to accurately permit a discussion of all Egyptian. But right, it's just they didn't do it. Now, historiography and misinterpretation. The authors do not explain based on historical narrative, although they present historical information, right? They're attempting to make a claim about history, but they're not actually, they don't consider any explanations based on the prior historical narrative or what science also, other science has produced. Egyptianized Asiatic rulers and migrants. Hyksos, yes, there were migrants, so all of them were not from that area. There are people that are known as migrants, and that's because Egypt had been invaded. You see, and you can't just discount that all of a sudden in the population's makeup today. Now, I'm gonna try to find this download link. I have this because I got a hold of the email version of this, but I want to try to make this available somehow for folks. If I could just find this, if there's any place where this is listed on the net, I can drop this in the chat. And if not, I'm going to, here. If you got any issue, here we go. Yeah, I'm gonna put a link up, y'all. Hopefully, this will work for y'all. But let me see here. Right? Yeah. Is it possible for me to drop a download link from mine in here? What's up, Divinely Inspired and Donnie and Negro Ralph, Andrea? Is it possible for me to do that? Let me see here. Can I put a? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put this link here. Let me see here. I will say share this to y'all. File, share, share with others. Can I do that? Share with others, copy link copy. Now let me just say, yeah, and let me say this. Save that, viewer. Now let me say one more time, share. Or I can say publish to the web, even better. Share, publish to the web. What happens if I do that? Yeah, publish. Okay, there we go. Now I got the link. All right, so let me give that to y'all real quick down here in the chat. Boom. If you want to review this this rebuke of Schuenemann's report by S.O.Y Keita and Jean-Luc Gourdine, feel free to do that, and let me know what you think of it. I personally, my personal take on this subject matter, and by the way, this is many of the even outside of this report, many of the claims that Chief X have made, they were not even claims that Schuenemann even made. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. Chief X said none of the findings, none of them that they did, Schuenemann did, right? They didn't find any sub-Saharan African DNA in none of them. That was a goddamn lie. This is one of them that they found. Okay? You see? And so you got to be on point when you discuss this, because this is another thing that is like the Bible. We come and we give you a religion and then we walk out with everything. That's what they're attempting to do with these small little intellectual lies that individuals like Schuenemann do. It's scientific racism, which S.O.Y Keita is debunking on behalf of African people. So you really got to clap your hands for S.O.Y, and you also have to support. You got to support, because they will be stealing your goddamn land. Yes, they will be stealing your history. Yes, that's what this is about. It's about being fraudulent, scientifically fraudulent. So when you see individuals like Chief X. And I'm not just banging on him. He ran from me, by the way. But I'm not. I have no. If he want to run, he can run. Feel free to run. I don't give a damn. I know what I'm talking about. But others too. House of Consciousness people. I mean, they can read. They're making erroneous claims too, many of them based on Schuenemann. And you need to know. The public needs to know how ridiculous and insulting the claims are, because it just doesn't wash with science. It just doesn't. And it also don't wash with common sense. Most of these claims, again, one of Chief X's claims is that the DNA from sub-Saharan Africa got into North Africa because of the slave trade primarily. That has been completely demolished by science. That's wrong. Essentially, people that don't really follow science make claims like that, or racists make claims like that. But it's not true. No, the DNA was there long before any slave trade in North Africa. And the North Africans primarily have sub-Saharan African DNA in them because some of their ancestors come from North Africa. Some of the people that live in sub-Saharan Africa today come from North Africa. That's what that means. They migrated there. And they even know which time period they migrated there in. You see? So they know it had nothing to do with the slave trade. You see? Just like the demographic of Egypt changed and how Egyptians look changed through time. Why? Because the population changed. Yeah, that's how it is. Another problem that Chief X and some others present, is they give you a false explanation about what the Green Sahara DNA says. I mean, the Green Sahara DNA findings say that many sub-Saharan Africans that you might ultimately call Negro every day of the week, some of them might look like pygmies. Others might look like folks from Angola. Some might look like they're from even the Congo, flat up center in the Congo. Some of these tribes that have been living there for thousands of years might come from North Africa. I mean, that's what the DNA. See, it wasn't just that African people was just sitting around bottled up and stuck somewhere, unlike other people of the world that travel. No, these people have been moving around that continent for hundreds of thousands of years before they even left. But also just in the last hundreds of years, 500 years, 1,000 years, been moving because of war, conflict, and other, geological issues, you know what I'm saying? So don't just let people throw that shit out there at you now. I'm gonna drop the link, see if anybody wants to hop up and rap for a minute. Feel free. Even the detractors, feel free. As long as you can keep it respectful and stick to the information. And be willing to back up some of the claims too. If you want to make some claims, I mean, I'm backing them up. I back up my claims. In fact, I'm not even claiming. I'm just showing you what the information has been. The findings are. I'm actually showing you. I'm not telling you. I'm not saying believe me. I'm showing it to you. It's here. You just read it. I just read it to you. If you want to write, I mean, I got S.O.Y Keita's email too, but if you want to write in this one, this is Jean-Luc Gourdine's email. He's the co-author of this rebuke of Schuenemann's work. Contact him, ask him. Tell Chief X to write him and say, hey man, did Caucasians, are they the founders of Egypt, or are Asiatics the founders of Egypt, or did Negroes have anything to do with the founding of Egypt? Chief X can write him. So in any case, let me see if anybody hops up. Y'all can, I don't know. A lot of, I don't suspect too many of these people will respond. That's been the history of how they engage others when someone comes and rebukes their claims. They don't respond. So, I mean, if they just don't, man. But in any case, this man, just like many other men, his DNA of Egypt, ancient Egypt, is in fact related to sub-Saharan Africans, and it's not a surprise either. There are people that look like him and are semi-related to that at one point populated places like Yemen, Saudi Arabia, the Levant, and but these people looked like Africans. So those people that migrated in with some admixture, it's not because they weren't, pretty much the same exact group of people looking the same. They might have had tiny amounts of admixture. That's why it comes up in their DNA. But for you to get very, very, very light in North Africa, you have to have multiple generational types of admixtures occur. More than one, you got to have multiple ones. I mean, just think about that. If you take a black person, mix them with a white person, what do they look like? Do they look like a white person? Do they look like an Asiatic? No, that have to be, you got to have successive, like a few different tries at this admixture to get that light. If you, I mean, for a lot of people, at least, right? And you got to admit, just take a look at what some of these Egyptians look like. I mean, if you mix them with a European or Asian, what do you think they would look like? You see, so yeah, you just gotta put the information together, and it's a lot of information. I mean, 30,000 years ago, which is a long time, there was 30 to 125,000 years ago, there was a group that lived in the Levant that was essentially had no admixture. People that originally migrated out of Africa, I mean, they have DNA on them too. It's called the first Arabs. Yes. And they had no admixture, and they were African migrants, and they looked like other East Africans. Yes. And because of geological changes on Earth, many of them migrated back into North Africa because they were associated, with people in East Africa too, right? And they brought in some of the admixture, but that does not mean that they're Arabs or Europeans. You see, so people need to start thinking about that a little more before they, really just do themselves in. This is a black man up there. It looks like a black man. Looks like black man. And by the way, the same DNA he got in his body, a lot of African Americans have, because some of their descendants come from North Africa too. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's absolutely correct, according to the DNA. So I would encourage folks to look up the peoplings of the Green Sahara. There's a few different reports on that, which kind of shows what S.O.Y Keita was talking about. He mentions the Green Sahara in his rebuke of Schuenemann and says they don't even consider the Green Sahara findings. Yeah, that's another thing they don't consider. And if they didn't consider it, we know goddamn well Chief X didn't. So, I mean, Hawass didn't. Why would Chief X? And if he did, why did he come to some other conclusion than everybody else? But all right, y'all. I'm gonna let it be there. I'm gonna let it rest. Appreciate y'all again. Click like, share, yeah, and post it on your favorite African Scholars Wall, on their Facebook, on their YouTube page. Yeah. Challenge them. Challenge them eyes. All right, peace, y'all. Appreciate it. I'm out.